right, hi everybody. This is now our Troubleshooters corner. We'll be here in a second.
Got a match done.
All right, let's do some troubleshooting.
Sure.
Okay. All right, who's first?
Me first.
Craig's first. All right.
I need to get my cup.
You gotta speak up, guys.
Okay. So this is a Christmas beer.
All right, so we got a Christmas beer that's gone wrong.
No, I just want some
It's
advice
just the
on
new
the
year.
spicing
Okay.
portion of it, which I'll tell you, I did it at the after the beer was made. I spiced it.
Okay, so post fermented. All right,
Yeah,
guys.
with the tincture,
Get here. Let's pass it around. Everybody take a taste.
with a tincture is the method that I did it. I used some spices in some alcohol, and then added them to the beer by the milliliter in order to kind of get to the point I wanted to get to, and I want to know if I'm close to that or beyond that, or
What do we got here? I was gonna say vanilla, ginger.
no vanilla.
Right.
Just ginger and nutmeg, of course. And nutmeg, I think, is maybe a little bit too predominant, and cinnamon and a tiny bit of clove, but probably.
So we're right in the middle of like traditional Christmassy spices.
Yes. And the base beer was supposed to be like Jubileo.
Okay.
So, but only a little bit stronger gravity than Jubileo probably was.
Well, first things, yeah, I agree. Nutmeg's a little too strong. And I would say, actually, I think most of everything else you got in here is pretty damn good. I actually think a little vanilla would actually be a good addition in here.
Okay.
Because a little vanilla would give you a little sort of sweetness and richness around it.
Okay.
And kind of complete that dessert cookie fruitcake thing that you've already got going on here.
But I would actually like to see a little more sweetness. It's kind of, like a cookie or bread or something. It's just a little too dry.
But I think the vanilla will do that.
Yeah, vanilla will help with the sweetness, but I think it also needs some of that full body kind of malty richness to it. It would help.
Oh, yeah, he's kind of screwed to fix that now. He can do the
I can do the vanilla
He can do the vanilla now.
I'm done with the beer.
I think this is very close
Next
to
year,
Yeah.
make it a little sweeter.
All right, other
So,
comments?
A couple of beans,
Yeah.
you think, in a tincture
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think like 2 good high quality beans, 4 ounces of vodka, let it sit for a couple weeks, boom, you're done.
That should be plenty.
I'd be
And-
careful with 2 beans.
Well, but if you do it in a tincture, you can. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you have as an avenue of exploration is you can vary what type of bean you're using, right?
Yes.
So like when people think of vanilla beans, they're thinking or Madagascar bourbon. Like they're usually thinking bourbon beans, right? And bourbon beans are the ones that are huge on the vanilla, right? Those are the ones that are like, hi, vanilla. Yeah, but then if you go and you look at like what high-end pastry chefs are using, a lot of times they're using like Tahitian, and the Tahitian still has the vanilla, but it carries a stronger perfume sense. So that might be fun to play with as a difference. I still suspect actually the bourbon beans are the right way to go.
But what they want to select is largely going to be circumstantial, whether it's pre-cooked or after-cooked that it gets it.
Right, Tahitian tends to be post, and
Yeah, because the Tahitian, the aromatics really perfumey, big, nice aromas. They just disappear if you cook them.
Yeah.
So you use that in something you're going to serve not vanilla after it cooks.
well, and so the Tahitians don't give the big vanilla punch, but they give vanilla notes, and then they have all this other interesting crap around them. That's like really cool, and so I like to play around with Tahitian just because it sort of befuddles people. But I mean, no, I think
I'll make both, and then I'll just kind of doctor it.
Yeah.
We have plenty left to mess around with.
Yeah, but I was gonna say,
Really
so
good, though.
since you guys still have plenty left,
Yeah.
totally play with the vanilla because I suspect the vanilla because of remember that our palates are weirdly subjective, right? They're not objective measuring machines that go this has 2.3 units of this and da da da. Because our palates are so subjective, we are trained in our culture to think of vanilla as being associated with sweet, and so because they are subjective, our brains, if they get a big vanilla charge, will automatically sort of add sweetness to everything.
Well,
So-
could he cook up some lactose and toss it in there? That would be
The
for
other
body a
suggestion,
little.
since you guys said that you had some more to play with, is do some with vanilla, do some with a little bit of lactose in it, and see what the difference is, and then see what happens when you add the two together. Because I mean, honestly, I think this is pretty close to what you want. Yeah, just that you just want that little extra to get in there.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, who's next?
Thanks, Drew.
All right,
I need a bottle.
you got a bottle opener right here, or somebody's got keys. There we go. It's a homebrew party. Homebrewers are never without an opener as long as they have the keys on. Which of course I don't have right now because I'm in my kiln.
Okay.
All right, so what do we got?
So this is a red ale, American red ale.
Okay.
It's tweaked from a recipe that you tried previously.
Okay.
That you gave me some tips on in terms of yeast. Managing my yeast, managing my fermentation. Starting out with at a higher yeast count. Tweak the recipe a bit. And,
Share the bottle. All right,
It's
so
supposed to be a red. It's a little bit dark for red.
and there's a little bit of a DMS character in this. So the corn. Right? So do you have anything for me? Very important. Make sure you pour yourself a sample.
Yeah, really.
Otherwise, it's hard to talk about it.
Save a little bit for me.
All right. So is anybody else getting that kind of cooked corn character?
Yeah, with the smell? Yeah.
Yeah, that's DMS dimethyl sulfide.
Is it? Okay.
Most famously found in Rolling Rock, but not quite the creamed cooked corn, but there's just a corny aroma. And usually that's from insufficient activity of the boil, right? So like your boil wasn't vigorous enough. Like,
really? Okay.
Now was this grain or was this extra?
This was great. Yeah.
So,
This is one of my first all grain batches.
all right. So let's talk about your boil. What was your boil like?
I boil on my kitchen stove. I've got a pretty good kitchen stove.
Are you
It's
getting good royal or
yeah.
not putting the lid on?
Not putting a lid on. No, absolutely not. 60 minutes. It could go longer.
No. In theory, 60 minutes with a good boil strength is hell. In theory, 20 minutes with a good boil strength is sufficient to remove SMM, which is the precursor to DMS.
Okay.
But it was a rolling is the lid a no-no? Is the lid a no-no?
Lid should be a no. No, it's over here.
Really? Okay.
Well, the idea is how much of it's fairy tale versus how much of it's real is sort of up for debate. But the theory is that pale malts, particularly Pilsen malts, carry a fair amount of SMM, and don't maybe remember the chemical name right now. It's SMM, which, if you have a sufficiently roily boil, sufficient air volume off the kettle, so no lid, for instance, it volatilizes out into the air. If it stays trapped in the wort, when you go through fermentation, the SMM gets transformed into DMS, dimethyl sulfide, and DMS is what smells like cooked corn.
But that only happens at the beginning of the boil.
No,
right?
it happens for the length of the boil.
Okay, so what if at the end of the boil, when I'm cooling it, I put a cover over it and, just...
If you've had it sufficiently long boil, you should be fine.
Okay.
Now-
That's the only thing I
Now
got.
the thing is, it's not a huge corny flavor, and it's not a huge corny aroma, right? And so Craig obviously has to deal with S&M and DMS all the time with your beer, right?
Yeah.
So because that's his big concern, because he is doing a Pilsner heavy beer that's very light and doesn't have a lot of room to run. So the other possibility for DMS is sometimes it's also something that's gotten into the bottle. But by far and away, the most common cause of DMS is an insufficiently active boil.
Okay.
Worst problem in the olden days was older malts. Not so much of a problem anymore, but I'd be a little concerned about fermentation if you feel like your boil is sufficient, like the yeast health and everything else. But once you get past that initial corn phase, beer's fine. And so this is really the me going.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
How did you chill it? How'd you cool it down from the boil?
I have an immersion chiller.
Okay.
It takes a little while.
One of the things that I've heard...
35, 40 minutes.
Okay, one of the things I've heard, and this shouldn't be a big deal if you have a good long boil, is that if it allowed, if it's a long time to chill, and then you put the cover, lid on it at that point, then you can still have SMM convert to
Well,
DMS.
that's what I was asking,
Okay.
because that's what I did.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean,
I cover
again,
it up and I put tin foil around it, make sure nothing
You
gets
want
in
to
there.
chill it super fast, or
Yeah.
leave the lid off until it's
Yeah, I can't chill it any faster
Well,
than I chill it, unless I get a plate chiller. And I'm not,
well, no, that's not true. What are you doing right now? Are you just doing groundwater?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Here's the handy dandy way of making your immersion chiller work faster, or any chiller.
Okay.
Immersion chillers or counterflow chillers work on the difference in the temperature gradient, right? So your initial chilling with groundwater here in LA is very efficient because you've got that difference between 210 versus 70, right?
70, yeah.
Big range. So what a lot of people will do with their immersion chillers is they'll do a large portion of their initial chilling just off of groundwater. Right. Get down into around 100, where suddenly now your difference is 100 to 70.
Right, that's what takes the longest
And,
time. Yeah.
and at that point in time, they go and they grab a submersible pump,
Okay.
drop it in a bucket that's filled with ice water, which is super goddamn cold. Get that differential back and switch the water chill source to that, and just recirc the ice water back in, and close that gap on that last little part very quickly.
Okay.
What?
So that's what
Some
you're saying.
people
Like,
just
Actually, what I do-
10, 15
immersion
minutes.
chiller, dunk it in a bucket of ice, throw it through that, and then the other.
I built my own immersion chillers, and I built two. And the way it works is I got one that comes off of my hose, like my hose line, and that goes into the first immersion chiller, which I stick in a bucket of ice water. And then the output of that goes into another immersion chiller that's in my kettle. And then the output of that goes to water my plants.
There you go, nice.
Yeah.
You didn't put some salt or
Yeah. Yeah.
But isn't it, I don't know the math that well or the science that well, but I think there's a point of like diminishing returns in terms of making it colder than.
It goes by e to the delta t, so it's
Right.
an exponential function.
Okay.
So that
Okay, you know this. I'm not.
Sorry.
Okay, so it works. It's a
Scientist,
smart thing to do.
it's
Exactly.
engineer, not science.
Yeah. Okay.
So it goes by that difference, and it's an exponential function.
So,
So it really is a big deal.
well, and to give you an idea, to bridge off of Cullen's comment, what I do at home is because LA groundwater temperature, particularly when you get into summer, sucks. It's way too high.
80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I chill so that the beer goes out through my counterflow chiller and out of the counterflow chiller, which has knocked it from 200 to say like 90, 80 range, right? And then it flows straight out of that into an immersion coil, and the immersion coil say an ice water bucket.
Oh, okay.
And so by the time it comes out the other side of the immersion coil, it's down into the 60s. And like usually around 62, 63 if I'm watching it. And so that's what I do as during the height of summer when groundwater's at its worst. It's like, I'm doing a 12-gallon batch. It's a 20-pound bag of ice.
So do you normally pitch at around like 60, low 60s?
Well, since a lot of what I'm trying to do are Belgians, and particularly Saisons,
Right.
I almost will always go in at like 63, 64. If I'm trying to do something more Englishy, I'll try and aim into the higher 60s.
Okay.
If I'm trying to go for something American, typically in that same area. But for the most part, my safe median temperature is about 65.
Okay. And that's what you pitch.
Yeah.
You mentioned the top off.
Yep.
For your Smith calculator, one of the things I've been struggling with is it adds like an extra gallon and a half just because of evaporation.
Yep.
Can you really trust that with the top off to really evaporate?
The old-fashioned rule of thumb, yeah.
I
First,
mean, I haven't
right.
done it with the top off. Now that you say
But
that, now
the-
I'm thinking I should add more, and I'm gonna measure it. But I'm wondering if I
The
should trust it.
traditional rule of thumb. Right. That's what I do. Well, no, actually, I don't do that. I don't even have a graduated stick. I have a tape measure, and I have a spreadsheet that actually.
Well, there's the markings in
Well,
the pod.
no, I have a. See, but I have a tape measure, and then I have a spreadsheet that converts the tape measure reading based on the circumference or the diameter of the kettle that I'm in and the height. Takes the tape measure reading and converts it into a volume because I'm a dork. But what you the traditional rule of thumb.
Yeah, that stick doesn't get much.
Traditional rule of thumb, the ideal evaporation, is 10% per hour. So if you're boiling for 90 minutes and you're in a 10-gallon batch, Beersmith is telling you, oh, you're going away at 1.5.
That violates physics, right? So if you do the math, it's wholly a function of the exposed surface area and the relative humidity.
No,
right?
But again, this is brewer's optimum target.
Right.
Brewer's optimum target is 10% evaporation per hour.
So like you Google it, like boil off rates or something, and you say I have a kettle that has a surface area of like, I don't know, 1.5 square feet or something like that. And then that's going to be the driving.
At the very least, I'll record the diameter of my pot.
Yeah.
And I'll record the volume, and then I'll be good.
Yeah, and there's a boil off rate of X ounces per minute of boil per surface area, and like the relative humidity also plays a role, but its role in that equation is guess what? In Los Angeles, the RH is always like 5%. Yeah, so it's a much lesser effect.
If we lived in Florida or Louisiana, it'd be more in effect.
But even still, like it's not that big of a deal.
No, absolutely. All right, but I think the rule, the thumb here is you got a little bit of corny aroma in your beer, but otherwise I think the beer itself is fine. I'm for a red. I think
What you're going for? I don't
well, he's going for an American red.
American red, yeah, that's right.
For an American red, I might want to see a touch more caramel. But at the same time, I consider being too dry to be far less of a sin than being too sweet.
I aimed on the side of
Yeah.
rather than
So-
too dry. So, all right, can I get to this is so, like I said, that was like my first all grain. This was my first kind of like bigger beer, like an IPA. And this is a rye IPA.
Rye IPA. Now, I have to ask, is the rye IPA based on anybody's recipe?
It is. It was originally intended to be a Nelson Alpine rye. Okay, so it's got Nelson. It doesn't. I don't know exactly what the other hops bill was.
All right, so Nelson Rye IPA, and what are our concerns?
Just
Or
it's
is this
like,
just-
I'm just trying
or
to
is this
get
a
feedback.
check?
Just it's just.
All
I'm
right.
trying to get feedback.
So we're getting a health check?
I just started brewing, a few months ago.
And how old's the bottle right now?
That bottle is, let's see, it's been conditioning for about 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks.
So
And you're all green now.
one month in the bottle. And for how I usually typically think of rye IPAs, it's fairly pale. I think obviously you have some clarity things going on, but you're also bottle conditioned, so whatever. And
Smells great.
yeah, I mean you got a great little pine hop aroma to it. Yeah. Clean fermentation wise. I'm not getting the DMS or anything else.
I was so worried about this fermentation too. The first time I did a starter, and I was sure that I had screwed up the starter.
It's a rye IPA. Is it?
Rye IPA.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, I mean,
It doesn't taste exactly like the Nelson.
no.
And then I ended up using different hops.
See, all right.
I used Nelson and some other hops.
See, here's my problem. Is
I
like,
like it too.
I've never
I think
bought.
it's my best
I've never liked the whole cloning thing because why?
But if you find something you like, you kind of use it as a basis.
No, exactly. No, I like the idea of I'm targeting somewhere near.
Right, that was what
That's
my
fine.
intention. Right?
But I know so many people are like, no, this isn't exactly like the other beer. It's wrong. I'm like, yeah, boo. All right, but point being, I think you have a really great aroma here. You have a wonderful hop sharpness that comes into the finish. Beer finish is dry. It gets the hell off the palate, and it's not cloying in any great fashion, right?
It's good. It's good. I like
Yeah, I mean, clean.
Nice rye finish.
Yeah, clean, spicy,
Just a
hoppy.
little astringent on the finish, but
that's the
not
hops.
surprising.
Well, it's a little. Colin's saying it's a little astringent on the finish, and that's largely
It's a
the hops.
chalky feeling at the finish.
Okay.
All right.
I think there's too much rye.
Well,
Might be too much rye.
how much rye was in this?
Let's see. It was 3 pounds. out of
In 5 gallons?
for a 5 gallon.
And then, so what, like
and
a
5
10?
pounds of
It'd be like
two
probably-
row.
All right, so far we're
I
like
had more
30.
than that. More like 7 pounds of 2 row.
All right, so
3
far we're
pounds, and
30%. Yeah, and typically the rule of thumb, as rule of thumbs go, is about 20%.
20%.
Yeah.
Okay.
But still, I mean, yeah,
There's other people who say there is no upper limit.
All
It's
right.
just a matter of how much you can deal with in
Yeah,
your match.
personally, I would like the ride dialed back a little bit.
So
I
it might be nice to just go 8 pounds of 2 row,
yeah,
20 pounds of raw,
yeah,
or
whatever.
8 pounds of 2 row, 2 pounds of raw,
Right.
and see where
Whatever
that
else
lands
I
you.
was doing, yeah.
But I mean,
I have to look at my
No, but
recipe.
I
I'd probably
like it. I like
Yeah.
rye though.
I do like Rye. Rye adds a nice little character.
And look, here's the
Are
thing.
you out of here?
Would I object to drinking more of this? Not a chance in hell.
That's a good thing. Thank you very much, Stuart.
So there you go. All right.
Makes me a happy man.
Yep. All right. What's next?
Anybody else who drinks?
I'm going the route that you do not like. I'm trying to match urination. I want to get to be able to copy something before I go off on my own.
Which version of ruination are you trying to go for?
So that actually, who knows if what I found is, I got a 2.0 bottle.
All right, you got 2.0 bottle.
Okay, we can try this if you like, guys. I thought it might be useful to bring it along.
Well, why don't we try yours first?
Calibration.
Well, the problem is, I would rather try his attention first to see how that lines up against like just the picture of a double IPA, and then try the ruination afterwards and compare, so that we can then say, okay, how close is this to this? Yeah. That way we're not like sort of pilot blasted by the ruination or biased by the ruination. Because my worry is, the reason why I want to do it that way is, if you've nailed a good double IPA recipe, I say screw whether or not you actually get ruination. Right?
So one of the things that's really on my mind with this beer is, as soon as you do the flame out, what to do.
Right.
Before I found a BYO article, I thought what I'm doing is killing the IBUs are going through the roof because my boil is too hot for too long. I'm not cooling. I need to cool it immediately. And then I read a BYO article where they keep it. You can actually add the flame to replicate what a commercial brew would do, where it takes a long time for the boil to cool down. Yeah.
Well,
So there's like the whole whirlpool hop stand. It could be an hour, hour and a half, and I don't know what to do
well, so
with this beer or any beer when it comes to how quickly I should cool down my beer.
right. And actually,
So
interesting.
you're concerned about extracting extra bitterness, yeah?
Yeah, oh, I guess in the very beginning I thought it was too bitter, and that's what got me going on that.
Here's the thing: if you're going for a ruination type IPA, I don't think your bitterness is out of whack.
There is no too much bitterness.
I mean, actually,
Stone world.
in some ways, and it'll be interesting when we taste the ruination too. I think your bitterness here is less than what you get out of ruination. Now, the other thing about
This is quite mellow considering some stone beers.
yeah, well, I think your hop aroma overall is subdued
Yeah, not much hop room.
compared to what I would expect out of a double IPA. Now, talking about the hop stand then, this is kind of interesting because the podcast that's coming out on Wednesday, we're launching an experiment during that podcast to do an exploration of hop whirlpools. Because what you're talking about, like, in terms of bitterness addition. So we're going to have experimenters from around the country do two stands, or do one batch, two different temperature stands. One where they add the whirlpool hops at 170, and the other where they add them at 120. Because in theory, the hop oils, like those big essential oils with all the aromatics that we care about, are volatile up to about 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And so, with 140 degrees, if we're doing our hop stands at 170, in theory, we're blowing all that crap out, right? We're volatilizing it out of the kettle. Question, of course, how much you're actually volatilizing or putting out in the air when you're not still moving the wort heavily. So what we're going to do is we're going to have people do 170, one batch, or one half their wort with at 170, and the other half at 120. And see what perceived differences there are between the two batches. Now here, again, I think Your bitterness is fine. It's actually fairly restrained, I would say, compared to ruination. We'll try that in a second. And your aroma, to me, is actually, is there Simcoe in this, or is this, what's in this?
Simcoe. Yeah.
Right, because the aroma is sandalwood. And so, like, some of the Simcoe crops out there, some of them are big grapefruit, some of them are big catfish, but some of them are also big sandalwood.
I did put a little citrate into it because I just like it.
So I've actually done that experiment more or less already. The beer I brought to what's the big camp fest? Southern California Fest. Josiah convinced me to change the recipe I always do with hop stand, and I turned my wort chiller on and I missed it. It's supposed to be at 180 and I did it at 140 or so, and I hated how little bitterness I got out of it. It really mattered.
Well,
And I did the exact same recipe again. Turned on my wort chiller, turned it off, it got low, turned it back on, got it at 180, did the exact same thing, and it was more bitter than the beer I'm normally using.
well, but that's the theory,
I
right?
think it's
Like,
real.
You
Yeah.
still isomerize alpha acids, I
Yeah.
think, down to like 170 area.
Yeah.
And so if you're planning on having that bitterness in the
Yeah.
beer, then yeah, you have to do it at 170. You have to adjust your bitterness.
Yeah.
But if what you're aiming for, which is what a lot of now, even though I say we're in the IPA of everything time right now, you know, a lot of people now have gotten away from the sort of, you know, macho dick measuring contest of how many IBUs can I stuff in a beer. And
Thank you for saying that. You make me very happy.
you know, but a lot of people have gotten away from that, and they're now trying to focus on hop flavor, hop aroma, and so people are now starting to play around with that. So, can I get less bitterness and get more hop flavor by doing this different temperature stand? So,
Yeah.
let's go. Let's have the Ruination 2.0 and talk about this in
I
conjunction.
definitely think the temperature thing is real though, because I've done it myself.
It's totally real, but what I totally want to see is I want to see what people's observed differences are when they get into blind tasters.
So the theory though is that you get more hop flavor
Right.
and aroma.
You preserve more than
140.
yeah. Well, 120.
120. Oh, okay.
So what would you say is the typical, what should I do as far as cool down? Should I wait 15 minutes, 30 minutes? What's,
For your whirlpool?
yeah, I mean,
Just cool it till 180.
Well, I mean, here's the thing is, a couple different approaches. Depending if you want the bitterness, do it the traditional way. I mean, Stone does everything with an offset calandria, so they're not heating in their boil kettle. So the second they stop cycling through the off-board heater, they come off the boil. So you can assume that Stone, if they're doing their whirlpool stands, are probably doing their whirlpool stands starting hot. Right? And so to compensate for that, you expect bitterness from your hop stands, and also then compensate for any lost oils by just jamming more hops into the
Let's get like a,
right?
so I was thinking about doing
especially
like
in their,
an hour and a half
enjoyed by-
or an hour for a hop stand and adding,
especially
instead of
on
doing
those.
all of my flame out hops, cut it in half and do the second half of my flame out hops at 170 degrees.
Well,
And do a 1 hour hop stand and then record the temperature and then get the wort chiller.
all right. So very first note
Oh yeah.
in smelling the ruination,
That's lighter.
big dry hop in this. Right? So I don't know about in
You
your
smell so much better.
well,
I did do the dry hop, yeah,
a big
5
big
days.
hop.
all right.
How many hops? How many ounces?
I don't remember.
Do we
I
get
have the recipe right here.
do we get any clues on the bottle of what they're using? Probably not.
This is a heavy dry hop.
Yeah.
I think it
No,
is on
Combine
there,
alcohol
actually.
with large
Citra, Simcoe.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is very heavily dry hopped, and I think immediately the very first thing we get, difference-wise, I mean, you get the paleness, right? You know, the Ruination's paler than yours was, but that may be a function also of yeast in yours. Like your sample may have had more yeast in it, reflecting more light, making it less.
Definitely does.
I
But
did do the hop start or yeast starter.
right, but I'm just saying, you know, just even coming out of the fermenter, you would have ended up with more.
Numbers, we don't hardly ever filter stuff, so we can
Right.
always have some.
This is either filtered or cold crashed out the wazoo in order to get this brightness, right? Because this is very bright.
Very right.
So you have a double whammy working against you as a home brewer doing an IPA or a double IPA. If you're not cold crashing or filtering, is that one, you're going to have extra yeast in your beer, and two, you're going to also still have the hop haze. Knowing the guys at Stone, they're probably either filtering or cold crashing the living hell out of this in order to get that brilliance.
Yeah.
Because they're dropping basically all the yeast and all the polyphenols from the hops out.
Maybe two more.
They could be fine.
I might have to go in and start.
It's all the hop junk, all the polyphenols from the tannins and the hops and everything else.
I'm going to have to go get my meeting started again.
Depends. I know they get trapped by yeast. I don't know about fine. That I know.
Here's another question. What hop did you bitter with?
It was 2 ounces of dry hops.
Or your 60-minute hop, what did you
I just want to break in here. We're going to start the meeting.
All right.
Just a couple of minutes.
All right.
So,
Well, we got a few minutes because it takes Falcons a minute to do it.
Anyway.
Anyway.
And half an ounce of citron.
So bitter
So-
at 60 minutes?
No, the 60 minute.
So-
Warrior.
2.25 ounces of Warrior.
I wonder how much that matters. It's largely believed that Chinook is Stone's bittering hop.
Well,
I did that
no,
because
it's believed that it's their favorite hop for arrogant bastard.
Yeah.
Now, I will say,
You
taking
don't
from
think
the
that's the house hop?
I don't like this because I mean Chinook's way too harsh for some of the things they're doing. I will say, all right, comparison notes between your beer and this one. We have the clarity difference and the color difference kind of tied together. Big boost in the dry hop character in the ruination proper compared to yours, and there's also more bitterness evident in this beer than there is in yours. Now, part of that may be if you have extra yeast and other gunk in yours, that can mask some of the flavor of the hop. So, 2 big notes right there off the bat. Get your beer clear, get it drop clear, findings, cold crashing time, whatever. I don't really usually recommend filtering because that's a pain in the ass.
How long does cold crashing really take to get it clear?
I've had super dramatic results within 48 hours.
And what do you? I don't
Cold
even
crashing meaning
So
room temperature.
cold crashing is take the fermenter, put it in a fridge or a chest freezer or something like that, and get it down as about close to freezing as you can, like 33, 32, and just let it sit there. Don't do a damn thing though. Just let it sit.
You haven't even added the yeast yet.
No. This is after fermentation. After fermentation. Ferment the beer, blah, 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 beer's fermented, you're in front of gravity. Take it from there, put it in a cold space, or if you've got temperature control, just turn the temperature down.
Okay.
And get it to like 35, 33, that area, and just let it sit there for a week. Right? And you just let it sit there for a week, oh my god. You're like, your mind gets blown by the amount of clarity you get. Because you're like, shit, I've never realized. Now the real trick is also then, once you let it settle for a week or two at that temperature,
Yeah.
racking it away
Right,
so
without
you're not
getting
taking
that
it out
crap back
back. But that's a big difference. But here, definitely look at your dry hopping schedule. If you only did 1 dry hop, maybe look at like doing like 2 or more. Yeah, shorter periods of time, more intense hopping. And then I think looking at your bittering addition to get a little, drive a little bit more. Now to Nate's point, one of the things I would say is maybe in your hop addition, with a tiny touch of Chinook. Because
Okay, so for the bittering hop, I chose
you did Warrior and
Warrior
Synthetic.
instead of something else because since bittering it shouldn't matter. Maybe that was a mistake.
No, I think Warrior is a great bittering hop. I use Warrior Magnum in almost everything I do. But when you're doing an IPA like this, or a double IPA like this, adding a small touch of something like Chinook, which is a high oil, high Q hop, Chinook's a very rough hop. Right, when you taste it, you get that little, and that little extra jank adds to the bitterness of your beer. So get most of your bitters from Warrior, and there's like a tiny touch of Chinook. Gives you that little like feeling like somebody's running sandpaper punch. Right? And that little bit actually sort of drives home that point. The problem with a lot of these like cleaner hops that we have nowadays is they don't quite give you the same oomph. You can get the ideas the same, but if you have like an 80 IBU beer with Warrior and an 80 IBU beer with Chinook, they don't taste the same. So, all right.
So you do your Chinook as a bittering hop, mixed with the Warrior?
Yeah, mixed with it.
Yeah.
I would do it as a bittering scope. All right, is this it? And then we got one double. We got Chris. We have your triple IPA. I just haven't had it yet.
So this is it's a Belgian dark strong ale. It's a kit. So I can't say anything about the recipe, but I had problems with
that's where
I do it properly. I need some characterization on that for your flaws. I mean, I can definitely pick up, flaws, but I want someone to tell me specifically, like, oh, it tastes like this, tastes like that. Because Belgian dark
So we're worried about Belgian strong dark, and you're worried mostly about fermentation.
I can tell you up front, it was a extended boil. Took really too much liquid and just boil off a lot of it, and then I got pretty heavy caramelization. But I think my most problem is fermentation.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say. All right, so all right, so Belgian strong dark, worried about fermentation, extended boil. First smell right off the bat, apple. Rusty red apple, and that's an ester that usually comes from high fermentation. High fermentation temps.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's not related to diacetyl or diacetyl or however you want to say it. It's literally almost always it's either yeast stress, like you're not picking up yeast, or more often it's from the yeast temperature.
What temperature?
So, the first day I didn't have fermentation temperature screwed up on some temperature control that screwed up. So it was probably somewhere in the 80s, potentially even like 90s. It was bad. It was
This is like green apple. I made a 20%.
It's not green. It's red.
I left it in my garage. I had
It's not enough acid. It's not enough acid.
and my fermenter was too big.
It's sweet.
It's the same ester.
But what does that mean though if it's a high temperature fermentation?
So basically what happens, yeast fermentation, just like say other chemical reactions, right? When you're in your science classes, you learn like everything about chemical reactions is time, temperature, and population, right? In this particular case, what you have is you have a fair amount of yeast running at a
Troubleshooters corner. We're going to continue on to the rest of the meeting.
All right, but in this particular case, you have a fair amount of yeast going in, which takes a good amount of yeast. And because the work is at such a higher temperature, they cycle through the reproductive phase a lot faster. And then the problem is the reproductive phase is when you're generating all of your esters and phenols and other tasting chemicals.
That's 55 gallons.
So because you're at a higher temperature, you get these sort of different pathways that are being activated.
Use D and E for
And one of those pathways is the things that generate fruity esters.
So the more active the fermentation, the more sensitive it is to temperature. So like the first part of fermentation when yeast is really getting
Close. It's not more active than fermentation. It's the more active
the rate of reproduction. Yeah, I'm sorry.
And also not just that, but it's typically tied into the temperature, right? Because you'll see some people they want to suppress esters or phenols, and they'll try and go with a big yeast load in the beer, right? Big yeast load, repressing reproduction, like for something like British. And
This was an attempt.
the fermentation gets less ester, right? Less phenol. Lower temperature, same thing. It takes a little bit longer. Your rate's not as fast, but you get there eventually, and you're reducing the generation of those chemicals. So this is classic warm fermentation. And so the only fix is don't do that. So
That's kind of cool though.
But what you used to do?
See exactly what happens.
What you used to use?
I don't remember. Sorry. It was part
Roughly?
of the kids, I remember. Oh, it was a Belgian.
All right, so
it was a Belgian. It was a white yeast Belgian.
Okay. So this is why I talk about when I talk about the Belgian beers, I always talk about the fact that I go in cold. So like just when we were talking about your chilling, right? I do 63 to 65 on my Belgians and when it's free rise. I learned that from another member of the club, MB Rains, who is the yeast doctor, the beer diva, yeast queen. If you look at the Falcons website, you'll see a yeast article on there from her that's epic. And her recommendation was always go in cold, and then let the yeast, because yeast fermentation is exothermic, right? It generates heat. Let the exothermic reaction pull your heat out. But start it slow, so you're kind of pushing down on that ester fermentation sort of cycle until it suddenly gets up and goes.
Question.
Yeah.
Is there any harm, other than the duration of fermentation, of fermenting colder than normal? Like, say, fermenting at 55 as opposed to 65?
Well, one of them is the colder you go, the longer it takes for your fermentation to start.
Exactly.
So the longer the fermentation takes to start, the more opportunity that opportunistic creatures like Brettanomyces and other things have to take hold. Right? So, right. Well, you figure, it's one of those things. Meeting starting, good, great, thank you. But the more yeast that are present, the more alcohol that's present, the less space, effectively, less food source there is for other things to grow. And almost everything else that we deal with, like Brett and Lacto and Pedio, all reproduce at much slower rates than Saccharomyces. So Saccharomyces will crowd everything out in a hurry. So that's one disadvantage of going low and slow. The other disadvantage is the one that you just mentioned, which is that yeast strains do have their comfortable zones. They will ferment in a good number of ranges, but if you take, like, say, a English ale yeast and you try and ferment it down to 55, you run a real strong risk of the English ale yeast going, nope, too cold, we're going to sleep, and just going dormant on it.
They will go dormant. They don't die, though.
No, they don't die.
Bring it back up,
Yeah.
and they'll kick in again.
Yeah.
Are there issues in bringing it back up, like stirring it up? Can you? Because I read
Yeah,
something in
well,
like a BYO.
yeah, no, I mean, like,
better to
when-
just
when-
do a
when
new
you-
starter and throw it in. Okay.
Biggest issue with doing the rousing thing, so rousing is raise the beer in temperature, take cardboard vessel, put it between your legs, and do the hula, right? Yeah, give it a shake, give it a swirl, get everything kind of picked up. Because flocculation is basically the yeast to clump together, right? The yeast clump together into a heavy enough unit that they go, we're down on the bottom. And so rousing, the idea is break up that flocculation and get it back up in the solution. And so the other problem is, if you flocculate, or if you swirl, you're also incorporating oxygen. And so then the worry is, okay, am I oxidizing my work by doing it? And I don't know, because the other problem is with what you were saying, go pitch a new starter in, is that then you have the problem of trying to put fresh yeast into an already toxic environment.
Right. So I tried to do a big starter.
Right.
When I had that situation.
So
Yeah.
it's always a question.
The apple that's
It's never going away.
acetaldehyde, right?
No, this is not it. Acetaldehyde smells like vanilla.
What does that smell like to you?
This smells like rat.
It does.
So, think Granny Smith, right? Granny Smith is that acidic, hurt
This is red.
type apple.
Okay.
This is red apple, and I forget the proper explanation for it because I don't have it in front of me. But this is red apple, not green apple. All right.
Thank you.
But now, in terms of what you can do for this batch, not much.
Yeah. It's more than halfway done anyway. It's basically just.
No, what you basically do is. Well,
Pretty much,
no, that's it. Invite your friends over, serve them, like a martini or something, and then go, here's my beer.
Exactly.
Like an angel food cake.
So, for the hop
With
stand,
like an apple.
should I then put the cover on top?
It might be good for cooking.
Just to cut off
A lot of people do, yeah. Well, particularly, I wouldn't be so worried about the covering the kettle at 170.
Oh wow.
I'd be a little more worried about covering the kettle at 120.
Really? Why?
Because once you're at 120, you're below the pasteurization temperature.
Oh, and the stuff that drops back in? Oh, I see. Now I was trying to protect it from the stuff that might drop from the air.
Right. So, but again, a hop stand at 170, I'd have more faith in surviving open air than I would one at 120. But I'd still cover it anyway. I'm persnickety enough that I cover the kettle, whenever it's like, oh, it's over to boiling.
That's what I do. Okay.
Because I'm nervous that way. All right, guys, do you have anything else? No. All right, so we got one more to try. It's been hanging out here for a while. Chris from Bend, Oregon, where the Shoots is located, who sent us that really wonderful bourbon barrel barley wine a couple months ago. He sent me a triple IPA they wanted for Troubleshooters, and we've just been fucking around and not actually doing it. So I want to get this done now, so that we're not hanging on to his beer any longer than we have to. Mr. Hamilton?
What do you call this beer?
This is Chris's triple IPA.
Oh, so is that just like a stronger double IPA?
Pretty much.
You want some water, Drew?
Maybe it was like
Yeah,
a
please.
triple mix.
Wait. There was a big dose of red apple right there at the end. All right. So, Chris, if you're out there, we're about to try your beer. All right. So let's see. He says he knows what the problem is. Let's see if we can figure out what the problem is.
It's challenging.
Oh, I think you said it's jacked up. Just now looking up there. I looked up at your comments just at the right time. Yay!
He's on?
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right.
And I've just been having to like kind of stumble through to figure it out because nobody's around.
Got a little burst. Love this sort of thing. All right.
Since you're pouring.
All right. So the aroma again, a little bit of that low DMS-y type thing. I think. Feel free to disagree with me. You're allowed to disagree with me too, Chris. I might not see your comments.
Smell like the last.
No, it's very low. So one of the things you have to realize as you go around being a taster of beer is that everybody has different levels of sensitivity to different things. Turns out that I'm fairly sensitive to DMS, and I'm also extraordinarily sensitive to ISO.
The session has been canceled
Thank you.
because we have more people here than we do in the meeting.
All right, we're on the last one.
I'm just fucking rude.
So you're allowed. All right.
Well, come join the meeting.
Fairly low hop aroma. Craig's warming up.
Gotta get warmth in the flavor.
All right, these things have been out of the cooler now since 10 o'clock, and they're still. Geez, they're still.
It's winter.
Very malty.
It's winter in California.
It's supposed to be a triple what?
Triple IPA. So think like a. I hesitate to say Pliny the Younger because I'm not entirely certain if Pliny's a triple or quad, depending on your terms. But nope. Chris, do you know what the alcohol is? Are you there? Can you answer real quick?
It's a little watery.
A little watery is coming in one of the comments.
Who? I get a slight
It's 10%.
10%. I get a slight astringency.
Thank you.
It's higher than I would
About, yeah. Most things in homebrewing are about.
I would expect a little more hops.
Well, so
in general.
that's the big one. So
Well, I mean, at least we can.
here's one of my things with triple IPAs in general is, you think about the madness that the company is Pliny the Younger's arrival every year, right? Everybody's waiting in line for 10 goddamn hours to go have a glass this big. Never won't do it. Because to me, one of the biggest things I get out of it is there's never enough hop aroma or hop bitterness to it.
Not much.
So this one, it needs more hops.
Yep.
And I know you probably added a crap ton of hops, Chris.
It's like almost nothing.
But I'm looking at the expression of it. And,
Pull off the under is hop extra.
well, hop
Then
extract's a
that's
big one.
Different level.
But getting a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of corn sugar in the finish. I got that kind of sugary thing right there. Metal, but that might be from the cap in time, but or the fact I'm drinking out of the milk cup. Yeah, I just like I really want more hop, like right. And
That's the only thing. I think it tastes good.
Maybe it was
Crisp,
barrel aged. It
light.
would be better.
Yours was a little drier.
Yeah, I'd like
no. Chris already does the barrel ages.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't need more barrel agers.
Okay, all right. But it's maltier than I expect from a.
Well, the biggest thing is that we come down to is, to me, I want more expansive hop aroma, but I've wanted more expansive hop aroma out of almost every triple IPA I've ever had, because I never think they quite get that. Yours being one exception, because I think you larded the hell out of that kettle.
Oh,
And dry hopped it to shit and back again. you probably wasted about a half year's crop of hops on it.
Probably not very efficient on a commercial basis.
But what we ultimately come down to is, so more hop expression in the aroma, but then also more hop bitterness in the finish, because what we come down to is the body's right, the body is right, the dryness is right. Yeah, particularly given that you're at 10%, so that's good.
That's pretty amazing.
You got really good control of the esters and the phenols here for a 10% beer. It's not hot. There's no fusels, so that's good. But really, it just needs more bitterness and needs more hop aroma, which of course means adding an even stupider amount of hops. Because again, I think we come down to it. It comes down to a finish like a barley wine, but a dry barley wine, like a modern American barley
And
wine.
what a triple IPA needs is that finishing of hops on the top.
So,
That's what should fade away, is
Right.
the hops.
so in other words, Chris, for you, since you're sitting out there, it's a well executed beer, great fermentation on it. But man, yeah, you got to get more hops in this if this really wants to be triple IPA. That feels like you're busting somebody's taste buds. So, clarity, yeah, and I think your clarity is fine. Here, Craig, can I borrow your glass real quick? Now, granted, that's been sitting in my chest freezer for a little bit, but yeah, you got plenty of good clarity there, buddy.
Not quite as bright as the other one, but it's
Well, but it's not. It's not as clear as the Ruination, but I don't expect it to be. So your clarity's fine. I think your flavor's fine. It's the aroma and it's the bitterness. But otherwise, I think you're on good track for a fantastic recipe.
Yeah, I'd buy this.
I would actually say that your assessment of it's jacked up is a little off. So, but again, more hops, and I know it's going to cost you a dear fortune, but that's what you want to do. All right? And I think you are the final beer of Troubleshooter's Corner. Anybody else? All right. Then we are adjourning, and we are going to go back to our club meeting. Everybody have a good time. As soon as I can figure out how to kill this thing.
He does apparently. And he's like, I don't know if he actually has a background in science, but here's one.